Once I got it, instead of making music, I was playing games for about a year and a half. But eventually I did get into programming, and then I wanted to make my own games, but I wasn't as good in that. But a friend of mine, he had already sold a game to a company, but he wasn't good with music. So he could do the games, I was doing the music, and that was my first game music in a game called Planet of War. And then the real start was I won a contest in a magazine in Germany, and with Commodore 64 music, and then I did the sound monitor, which is like the precursor of what you know as trackers on the Amiga. And with the prize money of those two things, I bought an Amiga. So I had it already by the end of '86. I had my Amiga 1000, and I was only one of two people in my town who had one. And but I stayed with the C64 for another about 2 years, and then I really got into Amiga programming and enjoyed it a lot. The Amiga still is for me one of the greatest things that ever happened. And then I did Turrican and Turrican 2 and so on with the Factor 5 guys, and the rest is history, I guess. And yeah, so I'll give it over to Allister.
Hi guys. Yeah, so my story, a little bit different to Chris's. It started out on a ZX Spectrum computer, and it could play one note at a time, a single bleep. I later on, a very smart guy, Tim Follow, and his brother managed to split that up later into more channels, which was pretty impressive. Soon I got a Spectrum 128. I can then play 3 bleeps at once. It was getting a little bit better. And then the Commodore 64, and that's when it started to change a little bit. You got very rich analog sound. And some smart guy, I'm not sure, somebody will know who it was, somebody managed to find a bug where if you changed the volume on one of the channels, it would actually click, so you could create a sample. Is there anyone here who knows who that was? Yeah. Was it you? No. Oh. I wish I'd planned that, but so yeah, and it was great for the time because samples were just coming in. In modern music, really cool to be able to play samples. Raw Puppet Music, Chris did. As well, a guy called Jerome Tell did a great job. And then I got the Amiga, and things were all changed. Suddenly I could play 4 samples at once, and that was amazing. To be honest, when I first got it, I was a bit disappointed because I lost some of the creativity from the Commodore 64. Because the richness suddenly wasn't there, and I just had these samples. But soon software came along, like Sound Tracker and Aegis Sonics, that let you really manipulate the sounds very well. So, as well as music, it was also very good for sound effects. And that was one of the biggest things with the games I worked on, games from Team 17. A game called Alien Breed. I just bought a new sampler. It was an Akai S950, and we'd also just had a newly born, we had a new cat, newly born kittens, and I, as a test, tried to sample their kittens. They had a really cute, really high-pitched meow. One of them, I got into my Akai S950 sampler, which was attached to a keyboard, and I accidentally leant on the bottom few octaves of the keyboard, played like a chord with this little kitten meow, and it sounded really scary. So I added an explosion to it, and that became the alien death sound on Alien Breed. So in Alien Breed, you're actually killing poor defenseless little kittens. Honestly, no animals were harmed. But so yeah, how did I get into to games? There was an advert in one of the game magazines asking for demos to put on my what was called a public domain disc. Now, what is public domain for the younger people here? They used to sell the music and sound and graphics for the price of the disc. Today, equivalent might be YouTube, where it's all free and you put stuff on there. So I sent him one of my tracks, which is a rendition of Jean-Michel Jarre's Rendezvous 4. And to my amazement, they liked it so much they put it on one of their cover discs. Of course, that was called 17-bit software, which is supposed to be 1 bit better than the rest. Yeah, and they turned into Team 17 later. And when they became Team 17, I was able to do music like Super Frog, Project X, Alien Breed, that we mentioned earlier, and Body Blows and games like that. I just wanted to ask Chris a little bit more about the technical side of the Amiga, because Chris went one further. Instead of playing 4 channels of sound, he managed to play 7. I want to know how that was done and why, etc.
Yeah, so I was always like looking to push the envelope, and the 4 channels were nice, but I tried to do the same thing that I had done with the C64, and I actually had a colleague or friend of ours, Jochen Hippel. He made a emulation of my sound system on the Atari ST. And the Atari ST doesn't have any hardware channels. You have to do it all in software on the CPU. And so I asked him if I could take his source code, look at it, and adapt it. Because my idea was to use the 4 channels that are mixed on the CPU and output that on one of the Amiga channels and keep 3 of the remaining Amiga channels pristine, because there was, I think, 1 or 2 more systems that mixed channels, but they would do like 2 on each of the Amiga channels, and then you had 8. I think it was called Octalyzer or something like that. But they all sounded degraded to me, and some of the sounds that I like to use, like bell-type sounds and things like that, they wouldn't sound good on that. So my 7-voice system had the advantage of those 3 regular Amiga channels where I played those sounds, and then on the 4 mixed ones I did bass and drums and things that didn't need that high end. And that became the intro melody for Turrican 2 is probably the most famous. And yeah, definitely got a lot of attention.